We are about to start one of the most highly acclaimed American novels of all time, The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. Now, it's not uncommon for students your age to wonder why we read certain books in school and what makes a book remain so popular throughout generations. And we're going to spend a fair amount of time dissecting this book and really analyzing the text in an attempt to answer that question. So throughout the unit, you're going to be asked to focus on 4 specific components of literature that will help you become better readers: imagery, diction, syntax, and tone. We are now going to review these terms that we've been studying throughout the year and take a look at a few examples from the novel. Okay, so imagery is the use of descriptive words to evoke the senses. Anytime that you notice an author uses language to create a picture in your mind, a sound in your mind, a scent, a taste, or a feeling, you've discovered imagery. All good writing contains imagery, and it functions on many levels. First, it enables readers to vividly imagine what the author is describing, which builds interest in the reader. It also helps to create a specific mood. So the author often wants the reader to feel a particular way or to create a particular emotion in the reader, and he or she uses imagery to do that. So the following is an example of a great use of imagery in Chapter 3 of The Great Gatsby. But before we look at the quote, I'm just going to set it up by explaining that Gatsby has these exquisite, over-the-top parties filled with decadence and excitement. So summer nights in Long Island are filled with fireworks, feasts, dancing, and basically all that glitters. In his blue gardens, men and girls came and went like moths among the whisperings and the champagne and the stars. So this is an example of imagery because it creates a very vivid picture in our minds. So often imagery contains figurative language like similes, and in this case, the guests are compared to moths. He says, men and girls came and went like moths. This is significant because moths are often drawn to flames, just as the guests are often drawn in by the lights and the glamour of Gatsby's parties. Everything is dazzling, radiant, and inviting, and this imagery helps the author express that in a way that's exciting to the reader. So in addition to the image he creates of the guests being drawn like moths, he makes specific word choices that hold significance, and this is called diction. So the words blue, moths, whisperings, champagne, and stars all contribute to the author's tone. So diction is the use of specific vocabulary, and just like imagery, diction makes a story more interesting, it creates mood, and it conveys tone. And tone is the author's attitude towards a subject. So those word choices are meant to provoke a particular emotion in the reader, thereby establishing his tone. So while most people imagine gardens as green, the fact that he describes the gardens as blue may establish a setting that's mystical, imaginative, even magical. We mentioned the moths in discussing the simile and the image that it calls to mind, but the word moth also allows the reader to imagine the frenzy with which people flocked to Gatsby's parties, almost as if they couldn't help themselves and they were being pulled in by a larger-than-life force. The word whisperings implies exclusivity, so these people are a part of the upper echelons of society. And even though everybody attends Gatsby's parties, they're typically for the rich, to make the rich feel like they're part of this exclusive circle. So champagne adds to this mood of decadence and luxury. And the word stars could have a double meaning. First, it adds to the image that fabulous people are at a fabulous party on a crisp, clear, beautiful summer night. And the stars are shiny, just like the people and all of the materialism surrounding the party. Second, it may allude to the people as the stars themselves. This is a party for the rich and famous to rub elbows. Anybody who's somebody is there, and the majority of the guests maintain this haughty, supercilious attitude of superiority and importance. Now let's take a look at another example of diction. In describing the tables of food at Gatsby's party, Fitzgerald writes, on buffet tables garnished with glistening hors d'oeuvres, spiced baked hams crowded against salads of harlequin designs and pastry pigs and turkeys bewitched to a dark gold. The first word choices that stand out are garnished and glistening. So garnished means decorated, so clearly appearance is quite important. Notice how the taste of the food is not described at all, but the appearance of the food is what's described. The hors d'oeuvres were glistening. The word hors d'oeuvres itself is a fancy French word. He could have used the term finger food, but that doesn't convey the same sense of elegance and class. The word crowded indicates the abundance of food. The spiced baked hams were surrounded by harlequin salads. Now, a harlequin is basically a jester or a clown, someone who does tricks, and they're typically dressed in a diamond pattern. So here's an example of what a harlequin might look like. The word, though, is also used as an adjective to describe fantastic and varied colors. So in describing the salads, he accomplishes several things through his choice and diction. First, we can imagine the many bright colors in that salad and these beautifully decorated tables. And second, he conveys a mood of entertainment, of brilliance, of dazzle. And the word bewitched continues to project that mood of fantasy. Bewitched creates this mood of enchantment, of magic, and illusion. This might actually be a good time to mention the title of the book, The Great Gatsby. That might call to mind a magician or an entertainer. Think the Great Houdini. So all of these were very careful word choices that contribute to mood. Lastly, the word gold is mentioned over and over again throughout the novel, and we're going to spend a great deal of time talking about how the colors in this novel serve as symbols. So gold represents the opulence, the wealth, the shiny appearance of all that glitters. Okay, so we're going to move on from diction and now talk about syntax. Syntax is the way in which sentences are constructed, and this is important because a sentence structure also contributes to tone. So think about it. Short, choppy sentences can convey a sense of stress or suspense. So if I say something like, I tiptoed quietly, no one made a sound, I turned the corner, the leaves rustled in the wind, those are curt, short sentences that might make a reader tense or curious. Now, on the other hand, longer, drawn-out sentences might convey a tone of wistfulness, of longing, or nostalgia. So look at these sentences from the end of the story. Again, we haven't read the book yet, but by just examining the sentence structure, we should be able to pick up on the author's attitude or the mood that he wants to create in the readers. A new world, material without being real, where poor ghosts breathing dreams like air drifted fortuitously about, like that ashen, fantastic figure gliding toward him through the amorphous trees. Okay, so a couple things to notice here. The most important aspect of the syntax of this sentence is punctuation. Commas indicate where a reader should pause. They also set off clauses that give important information about the subject. So, notice, a new world, comma, material without being real, comma, where poor ghosts, comma, breathing dreams like air, comma, drifted fortuitously about. Okay, so all of those commas are breaks in the sentence, and all of those breaks sort of create this sense of languid mourning. And the clauses give us important information or descriptions about each subject. So material without being real describes the new world. Breathing dreams like air tells us what the ghosts are doing. Now, the ellipsis right here, or the series of 3 periods, indicates a more major break. It signals to the reader, pay attention to what's coming. The ashen, fantastic figure gliding toward him through the amorphous trees is very important. Something is about to happen here. So these long, drawn-out sentences that make brief stops for vivid description show that the narrator is relating the story in a manner that's forlorn, woeful. And you may have noticed that the word choices also contribute to the tone. We have words like ghosts, dream, air. All of those things create a sense of mourning and loss. Lastly, we're going to explore tone. And tone is the author's attitude toward a subject. You may have noticed that we have already mentioned tone throughout each of these literary elements that we've discussed, and that's because they're all intertwined. It's almost impossible to talk about each one independently. Imagery relies on diction. How can a person create a vivid picture in the mind of the reader without selecting appropriate words? Syntax also helps create images, and of course, all of these things allow the reader to understand tone. So through these techniques and others, the author tries to make the reader aware of his feelings toward a particular subject. Now, one of the main themes of The Great Gatsby is the American dream. The author has a very specific attitude toward the American dream. And we're going to analyze imagery, diction, and syntax in order to better understand that attitude. He also has feelings about different areas of the country, about the rich and the poor, about the theme of appearance versus reality. So as we read the novel, we're going to take our time and closely analyze the text, training ourselves to always be looking for these things. And through these exercises, we're going to become much better readers. Now what I'd like you to do is take a look at these lines.
Take a look at
Think
these
about
lines
the particular attitude Fitzgerald is trying to convey about West Egg, which is the place that he lives for
about
summer.
West Egg. That's the place
Use
that he
imagery,
lives for
diction,
summer.
and syntax to get you there. Okay, so think about those things as you read. West Egg especially still figures in my more fantastic dreams. I see it as a night scene by El Greco, 100 houses, at once conventional and grotesque, crouching under a sullen, overhanging sky and a lustreless moon. In the foreground, 4 solemn men in dress suits are walking along the sidewalk with a stretcher on which lies a drunken woman in a white evening dress. Her hand, which dangles over the side, sparkles cold with jewels. Gravely, the men turn in at a house, the wrong house, but no one knows the woman's name, and no one cares. Okay, so on a piece of paper, I want you to write down imagery, diction, syntax, and tone. Start by identifying any imagery that you just read in that piece and discuss its implications. Then pick out word choices that stand out and discuss what they might indicate or any feelings associated with those words. Then make a note of the way that the sentences are structured and try to explain how they contribute to the author's tone towards West Egg.